Hi, this is Gary with MACMOST.com. Let's take a look at the new Tables function in Freeform. So if you've updated to macOS version 26.2, you should now have Freeform version 4.2. And this introduces an interesting new feature, Tables. So on the Mac version of Freeform, you get a button up here at the top for Tables and you can click it to add a table. If you're using iPadOS or iOS, then you don't see this button there, but you can use the Attach button, and one of the options there is to add a table. Now it starts you off with a 2x2 table, but you can expand it by either using the plus buttons on the right side or the bottom. So I can go to a 3x2 or a 3x3 like that. And let me zoom out so you can see all of it. Or you can click the table button at the bottom with the table selected, and then you can change the rows or columns either using the arrows there or by entering a number. So I can go to 4x4 like that, and now I've got 16 cells in the table. Now one of the things you can do with these cells is you can type text into them. So if you click on the table once like that, it selects the table. A second time selects the cell, and a third time will put the text cursor there in the cell. And then you could type something. And then it's just regular text, just like any text box. You can select some or all of the text and make it bold or italic or change its color if you wish. You can increase the font size, all the standard stuff for text. And then you can click to select another cell and type something else in there. Notice I really didn't have to click to get the text cursor in there. If I just started typing, it put the text in there. Now in addition to being able to center the text using this control here, you could also center it vertically using this control next to it. So you could have text that always just stays right in the middle even when you add more lines. You could also, when you select a cell, use the button to the left of the text formatting button to change the background color of the cell. So instead of white, I could have it be some other color or use the color picker there and the color wheel or anything I want to set a background color for this cell. I could also go to white or no fill to actually have it be transparent. And in fact, if you just select the table by clicking once, so not any specific cell, I can click here on this button and set the table fill. So all of the cells to a color like that, or no fill to make the entire thing transparent. While we're in here, you could set the borders. You could have no border at all. You can have borders around every cell, just around the edges, everywhere but the edges, just the rows and just the columns. So you can decide how you want that to look and also change the thickness of the line there. You can make it a dashed or dotted line. You can also change the color, choose any color you want for the grid lines there like that. In addition, you can also use the text button there and then start changing something about the text for all of the cells. So I can make it all the same size and make it a little bit larger or smaller, or I could change them all to be centered and all to be vertically centered as well. Now I can manipulate the heights of the rows and the widths of the columns by grabbing the dots here that surround it. So I can grab the center dot on the right here and we'll make the entire thing shrink. Likewise, I can grab the dot here at the bottom to make the heights shrink, or the dot at the bottom right if I want. But you could also grab any line. So I can grab this line here in the middle and make the second column a little narrower there, or I can make, say, the first row taller or shorter there if I like as well. You can also grab multiple cells and change them. So I could click to grab this cell, and then I'm going to shift click to grab this whole range. So I've grabbed the whole row here. So now I could change, say, the background color for the first row like that. Now the other thing you can do with these cells is you could put images, shapes, and other objects in them. So I'm going to click on the Attach button here at the top and select Choose a Photo. And I'm going to choose a photo here and it'll add it to my board. So now it's just a separate element. But if I drag it over a cell and wait right there, you can see how the cell highlights. And I could drop this onto a cell. Now this is attached to, or you can think of it as it belongs to that cell. So if I move the entire table around, I'll select the table, and it can be a little difficult sometimes to drag a table without accidentally dragging, say, one of the grid lines or something like that. So you have this handle here at the top left that you know you could always drag the table, and you can see how the image moves with the table. It's actually moving with this cell. So if I were to change the width of the second column, you could see how the image there stays with this cell. It's anchored with the top left anchored to that spot. So if I were to change the width of the cell itself, it stays there. Now you may have noticed sometimes the widths and heights of the cells change as I move things around. There's a setting for that. If you go and select the table, go to the overall table properties here, there's auto grow cells. Turn that off. And now this will not make the cells change size at all, which I think is a little bit better way to work with the tables. They're a little more stable this way. So in addition to anchoring images inside of cells, you can anchor other things like, say, this shape here. And you can anchor multiple things. So I could do, say, this star here. So now these are both anchored inside this cell. Now a neat thing is how copy and paste works. If you select a cell like this one, you'd expect if I do Command-C to copy and then go to another cell and Command-V to paste, that of course the text copies and pastes. But anything that is anchored in the cell will do so as well. So I can select this cell here that has this image anchored into it, go to this cell and paste, and it will do it. I could also select this cell here, and there are two objects anchored in there, and I could paste, and it will do that as well. So you can do some interesting things with that. For instance, you could create a table like this, and now I could get a shape like a dot, a circle, and put it in here like that. And then maybe another circle, and let's select it and change its color to something else and put that in here. And now I can copy and paste the contents of one cell and select and copy and paste the contents of another cell. And there could be multiple objects or images in here if I want. There's also some auto sizing features. So for instance, if I were to select, say, this cell here, notice I have this button at the top. I can click it and now it selects the entire column. And I then have options like I can add a column before or after this column, delete the column, or resize it, which will resize it to fit the content. It works really well for text, but not quite as good for things like images and shapes. So if I select this cell here, click here for the entire column, and then say resize column, yeah, it kind of didn't get that maybe it should have gotten rid of some of this space and some of this space here. Here's another example of how you can use this. You may remember this board from previous tutorials that I did. You could see how it's a grid, but we didn't have tables when I made this. So I made another version of the same thing, but instead I placed each one of these into its own cell. So the neat thing is I can select the table and I can move it all around together without having to group things. I could also change the width like that and the height like this. I automatically get these lines between it to frame each one. So maybe I can make those a little thicker and maybe a specific color or just black there like that. But now if I wanted to move these around, I could say select this cell, Command X for cut, go over to here, Command V for paste, and I could kind of move these around to rearrange them pretty easily. Here's another example I've used in the past, just creating a grid of images to use kind of as a slideshow. But you could do the same thing with a table very easily now, adding it, making it be right number of columns and rows, and then I can import in images into here, or actually I could cut and then select a cell here and paste pretty quickly into this to convert this into something that's going to use the grid. So now I've got them nicely laid out here in a grid, and then resize the grid like this. Here's some more tips. You can, in addition to copying a single cell and pasting it, you can select multiple cells, like this range of 2 cells here. I can do Command-C to copy, and then if I select 2 cells here, I can paste, and it pastes both of them in. If you want to change the width and height of your table, but you don't want it to stretch beyond its current proportions. You can hold the Shift key down and that will allow you to do it. But you could also, with it selected under Arrange, select Constrain Proportions. And now just regular dragging will mean that it's locked to a width and height ratio. If you don't like the rounded corners here, well, you can change that with any element in Freeform. For instance, the image here has rounded corners, but I can go to Format and turn off round corners. And I can do the same thing for a table. I can turn off round corners and now they're squared off. Another option you may want to explore is creating single cell tables. So if I were to take this table here and convert it to a 1 by 1 and then just use it as basically a backdrop for other elements. Like I'll take an image here and I will lock it in here and maybe I'll create a shape as well and lock that in here. Well, now it's kind of like if I've grouped these two objects together and given them a background and perhaps a border. I can move just that one cell table around and it has these elements, but I don't have to dig down into it to actually select individual items inside it. Now I do want to mention that tables in Freeform are completely different than tables in Numbers, Pages, and Keynote. For one thing, they're not spreadsheets in any way at all. You can put text and even put a number in them if you want, but this is just text. There's no formula functionality. You can't add two things together or use math functions or anything like that. If you just want to have a board that you can put tables on and do calculations and also put images and shapes and all of that, you already have that app. It's Numbers. Numbers does that very well. In Freeform, tables really should be called something else because they're not related to tables in those other apps. So as tables in Freeform is very new, it's hard to say how people will use it. It certainly is useful for putting elements into a grid kind of layout, but it probably has other uses as well. Play around and experiment and see what you can use it for. Thanks for watching. Want to know about every new MACMOST video each week? Sign up for the absolutely free MACMOST email newsletter at macmost.com/newsletter.